Welcome back to Learn Too Late. I took a week off, had a family vacation, was pretty off the grid, and just decided instead of stressing myself to put out an episode, let's just give it a break. So I'm very excited to chat with you guys today. It's going to be a solo episode. And I had a topic that sort of popped into my head the other day. So, the male actor from that show Off Campus is getting a lot of flack online about being full of himself. And it got me thinking, what would you say to yourself if you knew that no one was allowed to call you conceited? And I really wanted to dive into why liking yourself has become a character flaw. We're taught not to be arrogant, but somewhere along the line, we are treating confidence in yourself, pride, ambition, or even an accurate self-assessment of what you are capable of doing is this thing that is suspicious. And we seem to be more comfortable with insecurity than confidence. And I find that very strange. This was something that I really struggled with growing up, maybe because I grew up in a household that was primarily men, and it was okay to speak highly of yourself. It was okay to share your accomplishments. And I didn't grow up in a household with women having to make themselves small to make other people feel better. And this almost became a problem in my life growing up because I struggled to maintain friendships. I think because I came across as somebody who was arrogant or too confident or full of myself. You put the adjective to it. And I really struggled with it until I sort of quote unquote learned this trick later in life. And what I realized was that somebody could say things like, "Ugh, I hate my body. I'm so bad at this. I have no idea what I'm doing." Or, "Oh, I just got really lucky." And nobody thinks they're strange. Nobody looks at that as a negative trait. It's almost like that scene from Mean Girls where they're looking in the mirror like, "Oh, my eyebrows don't match. I look so fat today." And then Katie Heron's trying to think of something and she goes, "I have really bad breath in the morning." And then she almost became part of the clique, right? She used this self-deprecating language and it made her more relatable. It made her part of the group. And I think if you had someone saying, "Wow, I look incredible today," or "I am so good at my job," or "I worked really hard for this and I deserve it," or even "I'm a really good mom." That almost sounds socially aggressive, and I find that really fascinating. We've created this culture where insulting yourself is considered charming. To be self-deprecating is charming. And accurately complimenting yourself is narcissistic. And I saw this when I became a pageant title holder. I learned this. It was like, make myself small, belittle my accomplishment. Boom, I have friends. Boom, I'm relatable. Boom, I'm likable. And I really find that sad. And I don't know how we are societally going to make a switch where we can speak positively about ourselves without coming across negatively. And there's almost this secret language behind being able to talk about your accomplishments. And you have to say things like, "Well, I was somehow asked to do this. I don't really know why they picked me, but, you know, it was nothing, not really a big deal." And then insert accomplishment or insert something that you're proud of. But sometimes you know exactly why they picked you because you were good. And I don't know why we have to pretend to be otherwise because I feel like there's a difference between "I'm better than everybody," and "Hey, I'm really good at this." And somehow we're collapsing the two into the same thing. And there's also a phenomenon where we require confidence to have some sort of external witness. So you're allowed to think that you're talented once somebody gives you an award for it, once you have the tangible thing. And that's how I felt about pageants. I now have this sparkly tiara I was able to put on my head. I was accomplished. I had something to offer. And it softened this unattractive personality trait I had of being confident in who I was, liking myself, being proud of my own accomplishments. And you're allowed to, let's say, think you're pretty if there's enough people who tell you that you are, Or you are allowed to think that your business idea is great only after the investors validate it, only after you've raised XYZ. I think this raises an interesting sort of philosophical question of why does someone else have to believe in you before you're allowed to believe in yourself? And I find this phrase, full of yourself, to be a really bizarre insult. Like, what else am I supposed to be full of? Somebody else's opinions, how they feel about me, self-doubt, embarrassment, fear. I don't think that being full of yourself is a problem. I think that maybe the problem is being so full of everyone else's opinions that there's not enough room for you. Being self-confidence is not feeling superior. And I think we confuse the two. And if you really think about it, actual self esteem is remarkably non competitive. Saying something like, I think I'm beautiful, doesn't mean that you're ugly. Or saying something like, I think I'm talented, doesn't mean that you aren't. Or being proud of the things that you've done doesn't mean that you deserved it more than anybody else. You're allowed to be happy with what you've done and what you've accomplished. And maybe someone else believing that they're extraordinary doesn't actually threaten you unless you think that being extraordinary is some finite resource. And there's a lot of conversation online about this phrase, humble bragging. The phrase humble brag exists because straightforward bragging is forbidden. We've somehow invented these complicated linguistic gymnastics to communicate accomplishments without actually openly admitting that we're proud of them. And I think we can all read through the lines here, and I don't understand why we're continuing to do this. I can't believe that little old me is speaking at Harvard today, or I'm still processing this completely unexpected honor, or I'm so humble to announce. And I realize that I am guilty of this, but I feel like I'm guilty of this because you have to be. And I spent most of my life, at least from 0 to probably 23, being who I was, being completely unfiltered and honest about my accomplishments, how proud I was of myself, like happy with, the things that I'm putting forward in the world. And it wasn't until I learned that it was good manners to not actually like yourself that I suddenly gained more friendships, became more digestible, was afforded more opportunities. And it was almost like peeking behind the curtain at Oz of like, oh, this is how we're supposed to exist. This is the socially acceptable thing. Like, I've been committing this faux pas for years and I didn't even really know it. And as I mentioned earlier, this is particularly the case for women. Confidence requires careful packaging for us. Women are encouraged or forced in a lot of ways to be successful, but also approachable. You have to be beautiful, but completely unaware of it. You are ambitious, but you also have to be grateful. And if you are powerful, then you got to be warm. And if you are accomplished, you have to be humble about everything that you've done. And the ideal woman is somehow supposed to achieve extraordinary things while also behaving like this all happened by accident. Be exceptional, but don't look like you expected it to be. And I think this goes back to the previous solo episode where we were talking about how it's only delusional until it works. And I think that's tied up in this idea that we admire confidence retrospectively. Once someone succeeds, we rewrite that confidence as vision. Before they succeed, we call it delusion. The entrepreneur is saying, oh, well, my company's going to be huge. And that sounds arrogant. But once it becomes huge, suddenly everybody says, oh, she always knew. She had so much confidence. Like, she had vision in herself. She really went and did it. But you have to, again, have this tangible end in order to have that confidence be seen as something positive. And I'd like to spin this on its head by saying that false humility is dishonest. And I've always viewed it that way. When I looked at people who they knew they were great. They were beautiful. They were talented. They had so much to offer. Pretending like you didn't think something was going to work, or pretending like you look in the mirror and see something that's not obviously beautiful, I find that to be very dishonest. It's like someone said, "Oh, you were so great up there." And then you reply, "Oh my God, no, I was terrible." You're disagreeing with them so they can reassure you. Like, this is the ultimate fishing for compliments. And I just find this to be an unlikable trait in the people that I spend my life with and the people that I want around me. I almost want the radical opposite. I want a friend who walks into the room and says, "Oh my God, I look incredible. Look at this dress. I just did something at work today, got the promotion, got the XYZ, like I rock." That's the kind of language I want around me because that encourages me to be better and to do more and to aspire to more. And that kind of language, I feel we are really lacking in today's culture. And I don't know what we're going to need to do to bring that back, or if that ever really existed in the first place. And this is not to say that I don't think that humility is important, but I don't think that it requires self denial. Humility has value. We can be wrong sometimes. We can have other people have something to teach us. Um, just because we're talented doesn't mean that we're necessarily more worthy than somebody else. And success almost always requires circumstances that are beyond our control. But none of those things requires you to feel poorly about yourself. And if we're being honest, the people that are disturbed the most by confidence are the people who benefit from your insecurity. Sometimes that you're getting so full of yourself actually means you're getting harder to control. And we see this in romantic relationships, we see this in friendships. I feel like you also see this in toxic parenting situations because a person who believes I deserve better. I'm good at this. I could leave. I could succeed without you, or I don't need everyone to like me. They behave very differently from somebody who's always looking for reassurance. And I would be very weary of people who are critical of your confidence, critical of your success, and critical of you liking the person that you are, because I think that says a lot more about them than it does about you. And this comes back a lot to conditioning and how your parents raised you. And I grew up in a household where I don't know if we missed whatever social cue it was, but my parents, particularly my mom, raised me to look in the mirror and say, "I'm smart. I am beautiful. I am talented at this. If I work really hard, I can have XYZ." And I don't know if she necessarily did it to herself all the time, but I think she wanted me to grow up with that sense of personal efficacy that I could do anything that I wanted. If I worked hard enough, I could accomplish anything. And that kind of internal self talk will bring you joy, contentment, self assurance, and security in your life. And I feel like a lot of this is weaponizing language and allowing other people to control you when they don't want you to think highly of yourself. And to wrap this up, maybe the goal is not necessarily confidence, but it's self possession. And what I mean by that is that confidence feels like something you are performing, but self possession is quieter than that. It means knowing I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm bad at. I know what I deserve. I know what I've earned. I don't need to exaggerate myself, and I don't need to diminish other people to make myself feel more powerful. And this feels like the mature alternative to both arrogance and performative humility. At the end of the day, I don't want to be humble about things that I worked extremely hard to achieve. I would like to retire the quote, "I got lucky," from women's professional or personal vocabulary. If you worked hard for something and you've accomplished it, That's yours to keep. That's yours to hold. And luck doesn't have anything to do with hard work. The luck can come aside the hard work, but you had to put yourself in the arena in the first place. And if you're not allowing yourself to be in the arena, the luck can't help you. So walk away today feeling confident. Walk away owning yourself, owning the things that you know about yourself to be true, and do not allow people who don't have the confidence in themselves or live a life that you don't want to dictate how you exist in the world. That's something I learned a little bit too late in life, and wanted to share with you guys today. And yeah, I think I'm excited for this next generation because I do see it in Gen Z, Gen Alpha. I think they're flipping the script on this, and that's something exciting to see. So, thanks for listening. Tune in next time. We have some very exciting guests teed up for the next few episodes. So, thanks for listening, guys. See you later.